session. I'll entertain a motion to exit executive session. Motion's been made. Seconded. Roll call.
Mr. Lombardi?
Aye.
Mr. Bassett?
Yes.
Mrs. Johannes?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Mayo?
Yes.
Mrs. Nato?
Yes.
Mrs. Vada? Yes.
I'll entertain a motion to seal the record. Motion's been made.
Second.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Just want to go for the record that no votes were taken in executive session. And we'll go to the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Superintendent, item number 8, regards the NSASSP Level 3 grievance. We discussed this in executive session. Other comments, or do you want, or does somebody want to make a motion? How do we want to proceed? Okay, let's open the protocol. I'll entertain a motion to follow the superintendent's prior decision, prior recommendation to deny the grievance. Motion's been made. Second. Is there a second? Second. Seconded. Is there a roll call?
Mr. Lombardi?
Aye.
Mr. Bassett?
Yes.
Mrs. Johannes?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mrs. Mayo?
Yes.
Mrs. Nato?
Yes.
Mrs. Vada? Yes. Motion carries.
The NSTA MOA hiring vacancy process. Again, we spoke about this in executive session. There was some negotiations. There is an amendment that has been provided to us. Does anybody want to vote to approve the amendment? Motion been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the amendment. I'll roll call.
Mr. Lombardi?
Aye.
Mr. Bassett?
Yes.
Mrs. Johannes?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Mayo?
Yes.
Mrs. Nato?
Yes.
Mrs. Vada? Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you. Student recognition, Ms. Daigneault.
So this is going to be a very unique student recognition. Today we're kind of stepping a little bit out of the box and we're actually recognizing a family of Mrs. Ferry. So I'm going to let her speak and then we'll introduce you to the wonderful family that we're recognizing.
So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Corinne Ferry. I just finished my 16th year at Hallowell. So I'm pretty excited to be here to recognize our first outstanding Hallowell family. This is a first for us. It's a great night. The Martin family, you can see seated right back there, became a part of our school district when they became instant parents to beautiful 10-year-old Faith. Faith entered my 4th grade class this past school year after several years of movement and instability in other schools and states. Marissa and Dan Martin, newlyweds, might we add, immediately took this opportunity to create the most warm, stable, open, comfortable, and most importantly, loving surroundings for Faith. Balancing work, first-time parenthood, newlywed life, and just recently, a new home in our beautiful town, Marissa and Dan have kept Faith their driving force in every decision. They've been extremely supportive and generous in any way possible. From volunteering for school events, leading a successful movie night for the children in our town, creating an awesome trunk or treat display, and donating supplies. Marissa and Dan, and now Faith, are community members committed to our town. How could I forget this? Can you believe that for our Feinstein food drive, the Martins loaded up a shopping cart and donated the most canned goods from our class for the food pantry? But there's even something better. For another fundraiser, Faith brought in her own allowance money to donate to Pennies for Patients to help children and their families battling blood cancer. This helped our class raise the highest amount in the school. So just my class of 24 students raised over $950. They didn't have a choice. I found every family member and need a book? Ask the Martins. Their home collection has definitely increased by 10 times the amount since Faith entered their lives. It's not uncommon for Marissa to order 8 to 10 books each month from our Scholastic book orders for Faith, giving me lots of points for the class. This is just one out of the countless reasons why Marissa and Dan are incredible parents. Clearly, Faith has flourished in North Smithfield. Mrs. Melfi, the special educator that works with Faith, shared how remarkable it is that Faith, in one school year, has gone up 2 grade levels in reading. This is a tremendous feat. Faith's love for animals, friends, slime, unicorns, tacos, Mom's homemade pizza that I've yet to have but I really want, Dad's jokes, which I have experienced, and her teachers are purely a reflection of the kindness, unforgettable experiences, and limitless adoration from Marissa and Dan. Faith greets her teachers, instructional assistants, and her principal with hugs and smiles every single day. She absolutely loves Hallowell School. There isn't one task that Faith doesn't start off smiling about, even tonight. It honestly feels like Faith has always been a part of our school district. Adolescent years are unquestionably tricky ones. Dealing with changing friendships, children becoming more independent and responsible, are challenging for all families. Never mind a family like the Martins that's just starting off together at this critical stage. Dan and Marissa have created an environment where Faith feels safe, comfortable, confident, loved, and supported. Each challenge is embraced and worked through together. So much so that we feel like we're unofficial Martin family members. Without question, the Martin family, Dan, Marissa, and Faith, make our town a better place. We would like to take this opportunity to let them know that they will have a summer scholarship for Faith to attend Camp Phoenix. One more thing. The connection between school and home is a critical one. Coming together with the Martins to ensure Faith's transition to Hallowell was smooth and successful has been an incredibly rewarding experience. Thank you, Dan, Marissa, and Faith, for making us better people in the process. We're blessed that you call North Smithfield home.
Smithfield Teacher of the Year Award.
So apparently the Hallowell show is continuing. Good evening, school committee members, community members, Superintendent Mr. St. Jean, Assistant Superintendent Mrs. Arnold, and friends and family of Andrea Lafleur. Tonight marks a special recognition for an incredible teacher. Mrs. Andrea Lafleur, a graduate of the North Smithfield School Department, has taught in North Smithfield since August 2003. During her tenure, she has taught special education and, for the past 7 years, grade 5 at Hallowell Memorial School. Last year, for our grade 5 Dear Graduation and Advancement Ceremony, Andrea came to me and asked if the students could sing the Tim McGraw song, Humble and Kind. Reflecting on the lyrics in this song, there are no two better words to describe her. Humble is defined as showing a modest estimate of one's own importance. Andrea is humble. She creates thoughtful and engaging lessons for her students targeted to each of their individual needs. As one student recently expressed, "You always push us to try our best. If we don't get it, you will go one-on-one with us and make sure we get the skill and will never give up." And Andrea does this without bravado. She truly understands each of her students and will advocate for them in a quiet and powerful way. Kind is defined as having or showing a friendly, generous, and considerate nature. Andrea walks around our school with a smile and a friendly greeting for all. Even when frustrated, which is very rare, Andrea maintains her composure and gently gets her point across. Her students revel in her kindness to them. As Aiden stated, "I look forward to coming into school every day just to see you." And Haley added, "In the middle of lessons, Mrs. Lafleur will be so happy with your answer or effort, she will do a little dance." Mrs. Lafleur is always understanding when something happens the day before or night before, and you don't coming in looking or feeling your best. She will understand. The relationship she cultivates with her students allow her to support the whole child. Mrs. Lafleur is also an instructional leader in our school. Through her dedication, her students regularly perform at their highest level. She provides support to her colleagues, like Mrs. O'Connor, with technological assistance, the implementation of new programs, and the review of data to develop intervention supports for our grade 5 students. It is with great pleasure that the 2017-2018 North Smithfield Teacher of the Year Award be presented to Mrs. Andrea Lafleur. Andrea, as Tim McGraw sang in the song that best so represents you, "When the work you put in is realized, let yourself feel the pride."
Congratulations for Teacher of the Year. I am very proud of you. I am lucky to have you as a mentor.
I don't think I need this actually. Andrea, on behalf of the town council, I want to present you the citation, acknowledging what you've done for our children in our town. I remember Andrea when she walked through Hallowell, had her brother, and had the pleasure of working with her mother. And I had the pleasure of her taking the fear I have of anything that's motorized out of my life. And at times she'd say, "I can do it." It would take her 20 minutes. After 6 hours, it's done. There's no mistakes. And I'm like so excited to give me this because I've listened to TV in Spanish many weekends, couldn't figuring out how to take it, put it back into English. Today I was reading through some of my cards, and one of them, it made me think of you. A teacher doesn't teach you how to take paths. They teach you how to make paths. You, my friend, have done this. are special. And I look at Corinne and these young teachers. As a taxpayer, let me tell you, are we getting a bang for our buck? It's with my heart and my love that I present to you the citation of your so many. I can't even begin to tell you how many things she helps senior teachers. And we won't even tell you all of them, but besides the point. Andrea, we love you, and I love you respectfully.
Especially my family, who's always, of course, been there along the way. Fabulous colleagues I have at Hallowell. I mean, we are truly the best school in North Smithfield, as you can see. And this is, it was just an honor that I was even thought of for this award, but this has just really been an amazing ride. Thank you. Thank you all.
With the handheld, do a better job of projecting your voice.
No, that will just need to be turned on. Huh? It's going to be turned on.
Yeah, I know.
Anybody have any public comments that they want to say? Talk about?
I do, but I don't mind if you hold on for a
Okay.
I actually would just like to say something. Evenings like this, when we recognize special people, are the joys of being on the school committee. And I just have to say, the Martin family are just such role models, and they are, I'm so glad they decided to become North Smithfield community members. And Mrs. Lafleur, she's one of the reasons that we have such success in this community. And I really congratulate all of you. It's very special night.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take up public comment after the SMMA discussion. You want to identify yourself for the record and tell us where we're going.
Good evening. My name's Frenette. I'm an architect and educational planner. Phil Pinelli, another architect and certified educational planner. Tonight, we're going to give you kind of a status report of where we are in the master planning process. And so, the master plan is made up of several facets. Building system assessment.
Way to move, sorry. We can take this one through.
Okay, we're all set. The master plan is made up of several parts: building system assessment, building and educational assessment. The first one, we're looking at the building and looking at the walls, the floors, the ceilings, the roof, the boiler. In the second assessment, the building educational assessment, we're looking at the building as an educational delivery system. In that case, we don't really care about the roof and the walls. And there's two separate groups essentially looking at these two aspects of the building. The next element is the capacity assessment, and that's to determine how many children should and could be in your buildings. And then approaches to the master plan. We'll talk about that a little bit later. For the most part, these first three facets don't interface with one another very much until we get to the master plan, and then all this information starts to come together just so you know where we are, the first phase of this whole thing is data collection. We're essentially done with data collection. We might have to go back and do a couple more interviews, look at a few more things in the building, but essentially data collection is virtually done. The next phase will be to look at that data, and which is essentially analysis, which is what does this all mean? And the last phase is putting it together into a master plan, well actually alternative master plans, through which we'll work with you in selecting a preferred master plan. More about that later. I wanted to put this up, first draft. This is the first time this information has come together. Not everything is perfectly correlated, and essentially it's not final until probably months from now, but essentially so that there are some things that need to be vetted, and that's essentially also the phase that we're in. But I wanted you to understand we're not done. In terms of the building systems, now looking at the building just as a building, not as an educational delivery system. We visited all the buildings, looked at all the systems, and there's no surprises, I don't think, to anyone in the audience here that your building that is in the best shape is the one we're standing in middle school. Probably, toss up for second would probably be your elementary school and your high school. Many of the systems are reaching the end of their useful life. And Hollywell, now that much of the audience is left, I can say with, hopefully candidly, that the bottom line is that it would be difficult financially to renew that building, because if you touch enough things, you trigger a lot of code upgrades such that you end up having to do everything, so that you could essentially buy a new building for the same price that you paid to upgrade that building. I don't think there's any surprises there. Now, for the educational assessment, Phil.
Good evening. So in early mid-May, Ed and I and a third colleague conducted the educational assessment. And as Ed said, we're not assessing education, but the building's ability to help the teachers and administrators deliver education in that building. We asked lots of questions, lots of open-ended questions. How are you using the building today? How do you think you want to use it in the future? More importantly, how might your successor might want to use this building? What are the teaching techniques that you might imagine of how technology gets infused and in increasing amounts, and what does that mean to the building environment? So that's the type of approach that we took as we looked at the building. What you're seeing here is the building, in this case the high school, looking at the size of the spaces as they relate to the RIGL guidelines. And so the space in yellow, that's not within RIGL guidelines, is a computer lab. The next step is the mauve areas like this, which are about at the guideline stage, maybe a little bit smaller. The blue are at the guideline stage, maybe a little bit smaller. The mauve is 10 to 20% smaller than guidelines, and the red is 20% or greater smaller than the guidelines. So if a guideline said that a room should be 1,000 square feet, and it's 799, just more than 20%, then it's colored red. And so this helps you, helps us, helps you, helps your community understand the situation of how the buildings compare to contemporary guidelines and contemporary needs. Now, in this case, we're seeing just the first floor of the high school. The second floor is this U shape, and the second floor is almost entirely built. Most all of the spaces are. So those are things that we're going to then factor in as we start to explore options. It doesn't necessarily mean that walls have to change, but at least you understand what the trade-offs are as part of the process. We move to the middle school, and as a contemporary building, it is what you would expect to be basically meeting state guidelines as of today. The one that doesn't is the room we're in right now. Given the amount of students in this building, that's really not an issue. It's functioning well. As we move on to the North Smithfield Elementary School, again, this was designed at a time when classrooms are the primary spaces in the school, were designed at reasonably contemporary standards, even though it's an older building. And so from an educational standpoint, that means that as we look at it, what we see into the future is it has the kind of flexibility that's going to be needed. You can create different types of zones within a classroom for differentiated and personalized learning, for the ability to create peer-to-peer learning or small group learning within a classroom. So they have the type of flexibility. We're seeing some areas that are undersized, but not necessarily in any meaningful way. What we've also done, and you'll see that in a slide in the future, we've done the 3 sets of floor plans for each of the schools. One which is showing the size of the space, one which shows the capacity, and another which shows current use. So what we're looking at here is wanting to make sure that as we look into the future, the kinds of spaces that are needed are there. You know, do you have the art room? Yes, you do. Do you have the music room? Yes, you do. It's not unusual to go into a community, into older schools, and find that those kinds of spaces are missing. You're fortunate to have most all of those spaces in most all of your schools. And at Hallowell Elementary, what we call a California plan. You go outside and move from classroom to classroom. The classrooms are basically sized correctly. There's a few spaces that are undersized, but as we said, it is a California plan. Issues of students having to move from space to space, there's the condition of the building itself, are all going to be factored into options as we start to develop them over the next month or so. Do people have questions about these types of slides? And so as we move forward, we're looking at RIGL regulations. If there's a project to move forward with, and we're looking to RIGL for contribution of construction costs and project costs, that their regulations have to be kept in mind and followed fairly closely. The new pathways that the administration have defined for the coming year and into the future are important things for us to look at in the high school. And as that gets fleshed out, there's, I think, 15 pathways that are currently defined of existing curricula, but aligned to create the pathways should spaces be moving around within the building to better facilitate that? Are the right kinds of spaces in the right locations? And certainly same with career and technical education, and looking to the future for the ability to certify, potentially certify programs to be able to compete on a choice basis with other communities. So these are all parts that we still have to get into and move forward with.
The capacity analysis kind of ends with, is kind of the last step before a master plan. And I can explain this in a number of different ways. When we look at your plans to analyze the capacity, when we look at them in terms of education, this is what you own. We put a template over the top of it, which is a combination of our recommendations, RIGL's regulations, and what we think of 21st century teaching and learning best practices. That's the template that we put down, and then we judge your plans. We make comments in the master plan based on that superimposition of what, you know, metaphorically, our templates we're putting down on top of your plans. Not necessarily looking at your plans the way they exist today, or let's say the way they are used today, but how we would recommend that they get used. Now this is important for two reasons. First of all, you want to move your facilities into a 21st century utilization. And you also want, if this turns out to be a project that gets funded through RIGL, you want to meet their standards such that they will reimburse for the construction. May go that route, may not go that route, but we can't ignore it right now. So it's important to keep, to be judging your plans based on these, what I described as 3 different types of templates, so that you have the potential for reimbursement. Now, we're going to use as an example capacity analysis of your elementary school. These are the functions in your school. The most common function there is the general studies classroom. I think you can pretty much read it, even though you can't read the legend. The library is the big red piece, which is, and the gym is blue, and the cafeteria, is yellow.
These colors don't relate to
The size.
the way the previous group does. So these are differentiating by program space.
And the way the function informs the capacity is, for a building this size, you really should have two music rooms, 2 art rooms, not 1 of each. RIGL would look at it that way. Best practices in educational planning would look at it that way. So that's the way we're looking at it. Obviously, if you take 2 rooms that are currently being used as for classrooms, you can turn them into an art and music room. It lowers the capacity of the school. I understand that. I'll get to that. Deficiencies also impact the capacity of the school. It's probably more, I'm staying with the elementary school in this illustration, but for example, there's so many rooms that are substantially undersized in the high school. We're in the process of saying, from a capacity standpoint, how many students should be in those rooms? Should we, and RIGL would say in a high school that you would have 25 students per classroom. But if you put 25 students per classroom, you really can't teach the way people are teaching in this century, teaching last centuries. You have to have acoustical space, you have to have breakout space, you have to have room, essentially, in order to have one-on-one experiences in the classroom. And with, especially in high school, with so many undersized classrooms, it would be hard to argue that you could practice 21st century best practices with those sizes of rooms. So we'll tweak those capacities as we come to a conclusion there. So taking all these things into consideration, ultimately we'll make a recommendation in regards to what the capacity for each of these buildings should be. Now, I'm going to hand this out. This is also done. Can you still hear me? Even though I know that there's not a chance you can read it on the screen, even though we've magnified the piece at the top to show you what we're talking about. This is also done statistically, and essentially on the left-hand side, we've got a list of every possible space that you should have or that you do have. On the far right, we have only those spaces that, and the sizes that, as I said before, RIGL regs, our recommendations, and 21st century best practices, the list is of sizes and spaces. And then in the middle, we have the comparison in terms of percentage as well as absolute size as to how those differ. This is important. It's important for you to understand when we ultimately end up with a master plan that this has been thoroughly thought through in regards to how all these spaces can function. Another thing that needs to be understood, and now it pops up in red here, is that when we get to looking at the capacity, we have to look at the demographics of your district. Because you're trending very flat or slightly decreasing in terms of the number of students that are coming to the school, we have to pick a target date. If this master plan has a physical thing that we build, a building, an addition, a renovation, if it has something that we do based on the master plan, the soonest you're going to open those doors is probably going to be 2021, 2022. So we pick that date because that date relative to demographics then gives us the number of children that will be in the school, and then we relate that to the capacity. So again, we're comparing what you have, what we would recommend, and the differences. These are using that 2021, 2022 date. This is how you stack up in regards to current enrollment and capacity. And then, again, there's not a chance you can see this, and I'm really disappointed that the sun happens to be, or let's see, the shade is knocking out the final column. But essentially, there's two numbers up there that show negative. And what those numbers in red and negative say, that would indicate that a given grade separation, in other words, what grades are in the elementary school, what grades are in the middle school, what grades are in the high school. We've looked at 7 different possibilities. And then we ran the capacity against the enrollment and then produced the differences. This gives us an idea of what that master plan would be. And when you get a negative, that implies you would build an addition or you do something about that negative. So this is another piece of information that's now informing the master plan. Now, where are we? We're in the process of taking all this stuff that we just talked about and we're vetting it to make sure that we agree it within the SMMA, we agree with it, it's correct. We'll be discussing it with all the people that we've currently interviewed, certainly the superintendent, possibly some department heads, and that will be essentially the end of the vetting of all this data collection that we're doing. Next, after we go through the analysis of this data, we will generate the maximum number of master plans that we can think of. We describe as alternative master plans. We want to get everything that's reasonable on the table so that no one in a public setting could ever say, well, did you ever think of this? And we don't want to stand there blank face and say, no, we never thought of that. We want to get as many out. And then, once we have produced as many logical master plans that we think can exist, we will go through a process of narrowing it down to one master plan, a preferred master plan. And that will be done in an interactive process with the building committee, the school committee, and ultimately town council. Once we have a preferred master plan, we will we'll go through public presentations in order to build a consensus of this master plan. And it'll be during that period of time that it will be important to have these, let's say, rejected master plans, just to more or less show how we got to where we got. We're very close to being on schedule, and we're about to start generating master plans or alternatives for your review. With that, are there any questions?
So I know you've spoken with people from the schools. I'm just curious to know whether or not you've had any focus groups or interviews with community members, parents. Maybe you can speak a little bit to who you've actually reached out to and interviewed in this process.
To this point, we've talked to all the principals and the superintendent, and we're about to go through that process again with regards to vetting. And we haven't talked to, we had one session with the chairman of the school committee, the town manager, as well as the chairman of the town council and president of this town council. So we've gotten that far. We haven't gotten to parents. Usually the parent interaction is done through facilitated group sessions, public meetings, and not kind of a one-on-one basis. Anything else? Just see a show of hands as you understand the process and where we are. Then got to do a teacher thing.
So what we will be doing next, I don't know if this is on. There we go. So we're going to be going through all of this data, all through the collections again. I shared with SMMA the plans that had been discussed by the PIC previously, those grade level reconfigurations, along with a number of other ones that we thought of in the process. So we will share all of these documents to you once they've been vetted. I know there was a couple of labels on some of the maps that I wanted to change around because things have changed since the maps that they were using were produced. Not the building has changed, but how that can be used. So once we get this together, we will share it with you. And I have to say, it was so far it's been a very interesting yet somewhat upsetting process. One, we had a long debate on classroom capacity, and we're looking at a school, and they have calculations that, no, you can fit this many people in the school. And I was like, no way, we can't do that. But we have to think about how the RIGL interprets how rooms are being used. If they see a classroom, they're going to count it as 26 kids convenient. If we use it as a resource room and we carve up that into smaller units, that's on us. So if we're looking to do some sort of addition or expand something, they're not going to help us expand a space that we're carving up to use other than how the space is measured by RIGL. So it's an interesting way to look at this on not only how we utilize the space, but how the Department of Ed will interpret it when it comes to looking for assistance reimbursements. So it's a very interesting line we have to walk on this. Right, their formula is set up so that they expect a certain amount of small resource rooms, a certain amount of self-contained special ed rooms. That's factored in. But we do have a lot of creative use for rooms that aren't necessarily plugged into the right formula. So again, we have to be very deliberate in how we design our schools and how we're going to use it if we're going to look for the subsidies to come with it.
I just as
I actually do. I have to say, I was a little taken back by the target date of 21, 22. Does that mean?
This is assuming, again, this is, we talked about how well we have to keep it viable for a couple of years yet. If whatever we do triggers some construction, by the time you go through the processes, by the time plans are made and consensus is built and you go through the whole construction process, it's out a couple of years. If you do, again, that traditional type of construction, that brick and mortar construction, typically there is that turnover. Now, when he's talking about these dates, that would be, I'm hoping, worst case scenario. If we come up with something that's more deliberate or direct, we can accelerate this. But it's sort of like when I stood up in January and said, we have a great plan, and if everything goes according, we're out of here in the summer. Well, you know, I was naive, I was, you know, maybe wishful thinking and not realizing or the whole, how many cogs, how many wheels that have to be turned to get something to happen rapidly. This is more of a measured approach. So if we can beat it, great. Otherwise, this is what it takes.
A final thought on this is that, just to put everyone at ease, is that even though we're just now into the analysis process and completed the data collection, your problems are solvable. Making this function in the 21st century is solvable. There's no wholesale need for a new school somewhere. Although we might, as a master plan, we might throw something out as a possibility. Most of your problems can be solved by reasonable additions, reasonable renovations, reasonable maintenance. It's not. It's certainly not the condition that many school districts are in. So that doesn't mean that you can do nothing, but it does mean that the things that you probably are going to do are going to be within reach.
If I can just sit, and we're not suggesting that 21st century teaching and learning isn't going on today. That is going on. But what we're trying to do is get to how the facilities support that in a better way. I think we would all agree that with, in some cases, better furniture that's more flexible and more technology and these types of, and in some cases larger spaces are going to improve the ability to deliver 21st century teaching and learning. Because we've had some great discussions with your educators. There's a lot of great education going on. How do the buildings catch up with the teaching and learning?
Anything else?
If I may, our Bassett, I was on the committee when we interviewed you. So I do want to point out, and I hope you take this as constructive criticism, you had two separate legends in there in this presentation tonight. And take it for what it's worth, I personally wouldn't use red unless you're trying to connotate a problem. You've got red in a couple of sections in there that there's no issue there, it's just a size or a usage. I wouldn't put red in. That's just having gone before the public in this town, red is going to be an issue. So your red, yellow, and green is pretty well stuck in folks' mind as the stoplight out there, and that's what's going to connotate, regardless of what it says in the legend. So that jumped out to me. I guess I'd like to see a little more behind the scenes if we can as a school committee. If you're able to share those, we do have a way to securely share this. So as you start working through, maybe instead of waiting for the presentation here, maybe we could get a head start. I know it wasn't in the packet this week.
Right.
So just as a guideline, I'd like to see more up front, just to see what those options are. I think one of my main concerns too is, as a person who's been trying to wade through this for the last few years, both in town and dealing with the bond itself, we do have some outstanding bond money that I think I would best describe it as in purgatory right now, likely never to return. We've sent the request to the town council. They have not acted on it to my knowledge, so it certainly hasn't been handed over to the schools for use. Which means if there's any kind of significant cost, you've also got to think of the referendum time as well, which will be an issue. So just some feedback on what I saw tonight. My initial reaction was not great with the colors and the mix of one slide going from size to use to size. That's all.
Well, I should say the preview of the actual reports.
Yeah.
Different story.
Oh, yeah, no, and I was very impressed with their interview and what you presented, as past work, so I don't have any worries there. I just figured I'd mention it.
Just for the record, I'm not going to take the $12.7 million off the table. If the school's out of the question, and we have $4.7 million plus surplus, I'm not taking that off the table at this point.
Well, I wouldn't say it's off the table, but it is fully under the control of our town council, which has not provided us any response to our request for that money, correct? About 4 meetings ago, we actually voted to send them a letter requesting control of 4.7.
Right.
And we received no response.
Correct.
That's all.
But I think that if we make a presentation with this master plan and show what we're going to do, I would hope that we would have access to the fund. Hope.
Yep.
One other thing, Ed, I know when we spoke, you made a comment that I think is very positive for our school system. You mentioned that our cost for education is very, very good. So the cost based on our results and how much we spend is very good in the state.
But you're getting good performance in regards to your what you spend per student in terms of outcomes, and that's a positive thing. And you're doing that in the facilities you currently have. It's renewed facilities and facilities that meet 21st century standards tend to attract more people to them, and performance generally goes up. I think given the amount of new and the amount of renewing that you would do, this would be obviously the modest percentages, but nevertheless, I think in education it's always best to have the best teachers delivering the best curriculum in the best facilities you can get together. And that's our goal, is to try to help you move in that direction.
Thank you. I don't think this, maybe I'm overstepping my bounds here, but I know that you said you're going to do alternative master plans. And you said you may do one for an alternative school or an additional school.
You want me to elaborate on that?
Well, what I'm saying is I don't know if I want to spend your resources, in that area. If RIDE isn't going to reimburse us, as you know, most likely will, that would cause overcapacity. If those are correct statements, I would rather you not spend your energy there, but again, I'm going to want to separate those.
Those are like low-cost options, but let me explain what we oftentimes do. Maybe we know that the target is here, but we might often broaden our scope so that we look at a broader range of things, knowing that we're not going to spend much money looking at this. So that in public presentations, if somebody says, did you look at this, did you look at that? And you'd say, yes, we did, but. And then we have an illustration to put on the screen that shows why that was deleted. But to go back to the point about the elementary school, the dilemma you have is that given the capacity that school generates, the solution to your capacity and your educational delivery is relatively modest. That means relatively modest changes, possibly a small addition. Your kitchen is too small. Your cafeteria would be too small. But those are relatively easy things to fix. But if you built a new school, no one builds a school for 100 students. No one builds a school for 200 students. You build a school for 250, 350 or more. And if you did anything that was financially reasonable in terms of a new school on a new site, it would be large enough that it would then suck people out of the students out of the existing elementary school. So you'd have this dilemma that you'd have excess capacity. Well, nobody wants to do that. RIGL won't fund it. In all probability, your voters won't vote for it. So, but if people want to ask the question, why didn't you think of doing this? We want to at least show the facility the nimbleness of mind that we did think about it, but it doesn't work for this, that, and the other reason.
Anybody else have any comments, questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll go back to the consent agenda. The public comment agenda. Does anybody have any comments? Ms. Ready?
Smithfield Teacher Association President, and I'm here to speak briefly to the retirement package that is going to come before you this evening. Unfortunately, this issue seems to have become a bit muddied by political banter. However, this decision is not or should not be politically based, but rather it should be decided based upon logic and reasoning. And to clarify, I think that we should go back to its intended purpose. This was initially conceived in response to budgetary constraints and was an opportunity to save the district money. You voted collectively to support the issue because it was and is a sound decision for the North Smithfield School District. The question on the table tonight is, will you stand by your decision to support the superintendent's efforts to save the district money? I urge you to see this measure as the cost savings measure that it is. I urge you to remember why you voted for it in May, because that hasn't changed. And I urge you to continue the good work that we have started in building a better, a more respectful relationship by honoring your intent to support this measure and to support the educators that have dedicated their lives to the children of North Smithfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any community comments? Does anybody want to make any other comments? Okay, let's move to the consent agenda. Item number 2. Does anybody want to pull anything off?
I would like to pull off 4D.
Okay. So D can be pulled off. Superintendent, you're going to pull C off or identify?
I will see separately, yes.
And we don't need to identify B.
No.
Anybody want to pull anything off? So it's C and D that's pulled off.